Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular evening council meeting of Monday, July the 11th. We are starting with a public hearing this evening. This public hearing is being held pursuant to Section 465 of the Local Government Act. All members of the public will be given a reasonable time to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that is the subject of this hearing. All information, correspondence, petitions, or reports that have been received by noon today concerning the subject bylaw have been circulated to Council and are available to the public as part of the meeting package. Staff will provide their report, followed by an opportunity for the applicant to speak. Members of the public who have pre-registered to speak have been added to the speakers list in the order that requests were received. Anyone who is not pre-registered may call into the conference line during the live meeting by calling the meeting conference line at 778-907-2071 and entering meeting ID 506-489-9374 and passcode 485186. I will provide an opportunity for public comment according to the speakers list, followed by comment from those who have just joined the meeting. Speakers will be asked to state their name and civic address. Please note that all representations, whether written, in person, or electronic, are available to the public for viewing as part of the public record. Remarks will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker and should include all of the relevant information in their presentation. Further opportunity will be afforded all members of the public to speak a second or third time with new information only once all persons have had an opportunity to speak. Council may ask questions of staff, the applicant, and the public, but once the public hearing is over, no new information can be received. Council debate on the bylaw will take place during the regular council meeting following the conclusion of this public hearing. The corporate officer will now provide information on the notice of this public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So notices of the public hearing were placed in the Summerland Review editions of June 30th and July 7th on the district's website and on the notice board at Municipal Hall.
Thank you. We'll now move into the public hearing. Zoning Amendment Bylaw Water Use Regulations, number 2022-024, Z22-010. And is Joanne online? Oh, you're presenting tonight. Okay. Thank you, Brad. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just wait for my slides to be on the screen here. That's water use regulations, please. Great, thank you. So the intent of this zoning bylaw amendment is to introduce new regulations applicable to all marinas, docks, and wharfage facilities in all of the district's water use zones within the district of Summerland. So if council remembers, in October of 2021, council initiated through resolution to staff to direction to draft zoning amendment regulations for the water Z3, the intensive water use zone. Staff originally proposed to satisfy this direction from council with inclusion of new water use regulations and an administrative update to the zoning bylaw in March. Council deferred the inclusion of the water use regulations and specifically directed staff to include setbacks in the WZ3 zones as part of those regulations to be brought forward. Staff subsequently then brought forward a new zoning amendment bylaw, the subject of today's public hearing, on June 13th, and that was subsequently provided first and second reading by council. So the district's OCP policies include policy to support foreshore leases for docks or wharfs if it maintains and enhances the natural function of the foreshore, to preserve a defined public access along the foreshore, to protect swimming areas in Lower Town, to facilitate public boat docking in Lower Town, and encourage docking and mooring for public boats with new developments in Lower Town, and also to increase public access in Lower Town to the water. In the district's current zoning bylaw, docks are permitted as an accessory use in the WZ1. No docks or other structures are permitted in this WZ2 zone, which is kind of like a protection water use zone. And the water zone 3, as I mentioned, the intensive water use zone allows for more intensive dock applications such as a marina or other community use amenities. And the WZ3 zone is primarily located in the Lower Town waterfront area and the beachfront park areas of district-owned parks in town. Specifically with the water use, the water zone 1 zone, accessory use docks and boat lifts are permitted, but only as an accessory to the principal use of the of residential dwelling in front of that property or the water. Specific use regulations are also included under section 7.1, but these specific use regulations in the current zoning bylaw are only considered when a dock is considered an accessory use, and therefore it's only applicable to the water Z1 zone. Currently, the dot and boat lift regulations generally fall in line with the provincial general use permissions of the province. Like I mentioned, it applies only to the accessory use of docks and boat lifts. One dock up to 40 meters are allowed. No foreshore obstruction, such as steps, is permitted, but no other obstruction. Maximum width amounts are included and also brought forward in the new zoning bylaw. Allows for L or T extension limits. As well, there is a side property setback or separation from another dock. So the proposed changes to the specific use regulations for the bylaw that's before council tonight applies to all marinas, docks, and wharfage facilities, not just those that are an accessory use within WZ1. It has setback and siting regulations for both the WZ1 and WZ3 zones. There's also some housekeeping edits related to those changes to apply the regulations to all docks and structures, not just accessory use docks. And as well, we at the staff level, we removed one provision requiring conformance with the BC Building Code because we thought that our building bylaw is already established and can reference anything with regards to the BC Building Code, any construction specifications. So in terms of the specific use regulations that are applicable to all docks and wharfage facilities, this is primarily a carryover from the current specific use regulations. Again, but now it's applicable to the WZ3 areas as well, allowing only one structure per lot, except for park areas, which we've allowed an exception for. Steps if higher than 0.3 meters on the foreshore. Maximum width of the dock itself, 3 meters for private moorage and 5 meters for others. Again, I mentioned LNT extensions is carried over from the previous bylaw. Consistent orientation with the neighbor docks is something that was in our previous bylaw. We carried forward that as well. A 10-meter setback from other structures. So that was something that was in the previous bylaw as well. And then no roof or overhead coverings. So what is different between the WZ1 zone and the WZ3 zone are the extensions of the dock, how far the dock can go into the water. For the WZ1 zone, we have a maximum of 40 meters, while in the WZ3 zone, we have a maximum of 160 meters extension for the more intensive water use applications. And then also the side yard setback is proposed to be different between the two zones, a 5-meter side yard setback in the WZ1 zone, and also for the WZ3 zone, a 10-meter setback for the intensive water use application. I do want to state here, as what was previously presented at first reading, we had a different interpretation of the orientation of the property line as it extends out into the water, and this diagram illustrates that we're now considering that to be a perpendicular from the shoreline for both the WZ1 and WZ3 zones. And then finally, for the WZ3 area, zoned areas specifically, there are some additional requirements to have boat slips opposite the side of public park swim areas if they're within the 100-meter mark, and it's kind of illustrated there in that picture. So in summary, we are hoping to apply the meat of primarily the existing dock and boat lift regulations to all water use zones within the district. We want to keep WZ1 dock permissions generally the same as what they were in before, which are in alignment with the province's general use permissions. But we're adding with this proposed bylaw specific WZ3 regulations, including setbacks of 10 meters, a maximum extension into the lake of 160 meters, and then also citing wharfage on the opposite side of the marina dock when it's adjacent to a park or swim area. And I'm happy to take any questions throughout the public hearing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Kendra, correspondence that we've received to date on this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So 34 written submissions were received and circulated to council with the agenda package. 2 were in support of the proposed regulations and 32 were opposed.
Thank you. So now the public hearing part of this public hearing, and I would like to invite the applicant to, no, I'm sorry, we don't have an applicant, do we? Because this is a district thing. Okay, is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak to this public hearing?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Thank you. My question was, is there anyone in the gallery that'd like to speak to this public hearing? But before we go to anyone else, I do have 3 names on my list here. Robin Nazardine. Please come up to the podium. And begin by stating your name and your civic address. And there's a little button there to push to get. Perfect, thank you very much.
Good evening, my name is Robin Nasruddin. My civic address is 296 Greaspaw Road in Edmonton, Alberta. I'm one of the partners of the Oasis development in Summerland, and I'll be one of 3 speakers that highlight the position of the ownership group as it relates to council's proposed amendment to the WZ3 zoning. I would like to highlight some of the background as it relates to the Oasis project and convey to council the time, energy, and costs associated with such an initiative. I can tell you firsthand that we as an ownership group have and will continue to be committed to providing a flagship property in the Summerland area. Furthermore, I hope to convey to City Council the efforts that we have put forward to responsibly achieve a mortgage for this property. For some background, we have been working with the district to develop the Oasis mixed-use project for the last 5 years. We applied and received rezoning on the Oasis development, and we received a development permit for the project in 2021. We've received our building permit and are currently under construction. The development requirements that we have been responsible for, in addition to their associated costs, include municipal water systems upgrades, rebuilding our side of Lakeshore Drive with new curbs, sidewalks, and landscaping, as well as a new waterfront public walkway. We applied for a development permit for the Strata Mortgage in December of 2021 that included an environmental impact assessment report. The proposed Strata Mortgage included a public use dock area. All of this has been in compliance with the community plan objectives and the policies for lower town area of the community, which is of importance as this details the support for additional moorage facilities and is in compliance with both the zone that is in place and the current WZ3 zoning. Based on these factors, offering boat slips to the Oasis owners has been part of our concept since its inception. We applied and submitted to Front Counter BC for a tenure for the moorage in 2021. After the adjacent water lot area originally proposed for the moorage was rezoned in 2021 by City Council from a WZ3 to WZ2, we refocused our efforts and adjusted our moorage to a smaller 32 slip strata moorage in a small strip of foreshore in front of our development. Due to past encroachments in the waterfront abutting the Oasis property, we were left with essentially an unusable moorage area that was only 74 feet wide. I think it is important to note that when the WZ2 zoning was adopted for the adjacent property, this was done based off provincial standards for water lines and not the previously proposed perpendicular accounting that has been discussed for this specific WZ3 amendment. It is important to note that this perpendicular waterline accounting serves as one of two major points of contention that we have with this proposed amendment to the bylaw. I do question why this caveat has been arbitrarily added in this amendment when the most recent rezoning to the adjacent property had no such requirement, and the consequences of proceeding as currently proposed by this amendment would essentially negate our ability to construct any type of proposed moorage. As noted above, we have since scaled back our intended moorage prior to the submission to better conform with what we understand some of the concerns are from City Council. In the hopes of being a friendly neighbor, we have blocked traffic to the north where there'll be no impact on the adjacent property. Hence, in our opinion, no rationale for the 10-meter setback as proposed in this amendment. That 10-meter setback is the second point of contention that we have with the proposed amendment to the WZ3 zoning. The recent proposed zoning bylaw amendments to the dock regulations in the WZ3, the subject of this public hearing, represent significant challenges to our moorage plans. We appreciate the desire of City Council to regulate waivers and docks in the waterfront and fully support the spirit of this initiative, but wish to exclude the provisions for perpendicular water lots as well as the 10-meter lot setback, as we feel neither of these provisions are warranted as part of this proposed amendment. Proceeding with the amendments to the WZ3 zoning is of concern not only to us as a developer, but all the purchasers of these units. As seen by the dozens of submissions received by City Council, not only from unit holders in the Oasis property, but also real estate and development professionals and existing residents in the community, I feel it is prudent to revisit the proposed amendment again, namely the perpendicular water lot lines and the 10-meter setback. Our consulting planner will speak about the specifics in this amendment of concern, but I wanted to emphasize the significant impact to our development that these proposed changes make. We request that new bylaw section 14.3.5B not apply to the WZ3 zone in front of the Oasis development. Alternatively, that council considers a development variance permit in a timely and prudent fashion that will allow our moorage facility to be built by removing the above noted encumbrances. I sincerely appreciate everybody's time and thank you for the opportunity to voice our position. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on the speakers list is Donna Butler.
Good evening, Council. Donna Butler, 284 Main Street with Ecora Engineering and Planning Consultants for the development. I just want to spend a couple quick minutes to go over the amendments that staff mentioned here this evening and what is the subject of this public hearing. There's both general amendments that apply to all docks and then specific amendments to the WZ3 zone. I can say that there is absolutely no issue with the Oasis meeting the general provisions for docks in section 7.5. All of the provisions in there, this development is in compliance with. Looking at the WZ3 zone amendments before you, two of the three amendments Oasis in compliance with, including the length of the dock and the orientation away from public uses. As Robin has mentioned, we have concerns with new provision 14.3.8 to allow that docks shall have a minimum side setback measured perpendicular to the shoreline of 10 meters. The speaker following me is a marine expert who will go over the whole issue of how the Crown deals with water lots. But again, we point out the water usable area in front of Oasis is extremely limited, and the 10 meters setback does preclude a development in this area. We also note that the zoning line between the WZ2 zone at the Racket Club and the WZ3 at Oasis is not a perpendicular line, it's an extension of the property line. We also point out that this is not just a private moorage facility. The first 100 feet of this wharf is going to be available to the public with a sitting area for public use and enjoyment, and then a gate to the private area. So it's both a public and private facility. And it also will tie into the new waterfront walkway that will really enhance the Summerland waterfront. So to summarize, this development complies with all of your zoning provisions except for one. And I think the owners already mentioned this, but I also reiterate there's two approaches to address these concerns if council's interested. One is to add a provision in the WZ3 zone that exempts the Oasis moorage from section 14.3.5B, recognizing the constraints of the property. It might be useful to put up the marina development plan if that's available. Is that not available? Oh, okay. Alternatively, I'll also mention a variance could be included in the moorage development permit that will be coming forward to council in the near future that could also provide for this moorage facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. The third person on the list is Tom Hedquist.
Hi there, I'm Tom Hedquist, the owner of Trademark Industries. I've been working with the ministry for 20 years, building docks and stuff, and I had a PowerPoint presentation I'd like to go through at this time. So yeah, so that was supposed to have Oasis attitude as well. So it was more to get the concept of both properties and how the ministry looks at it. So the first property shows a proposed marina development where it would be, and as well as the Racket Club, how that looks on this property. This was in the OCP shown the lower town prior for some time, as you can see the date on the bottom. So the next drawing. So I'll go through the next drawing. Okay. Okay, we jumped one. Okay, this one shows a ministry. So the lake doesn't contour properly for perpendicular lines. So you can see they'll make it work or shape it for however the dock structures need to be applied in them circumstances. So it gives you the gist on this. As you can see, the lines kind of bend to contour to the lake, the show that the ministry will provide docks to the upland holder. So if we can go to the next drawing. This shows you inside corners. So it shows you it's not possible to do perpendicular lines because people wouldn't have docks in front of their properties. So if you can look inside them, inside curves, they do all their diligence in order to provide docks for everybody that's an upland property owner. Okay. The next one shows bigger structures and how the lines come out from there as well. So they show you that they'll actually go on property lines, near property lines, and try to do their best in order to make that conform as well. So if we go to the next drawing. So option 2, the WZ2 is proposed in front of the Racket Club, which it does conform to all the needs for there, but also mentions that there can't be any structures placed in front of the Racket Club. So if we go to the next, it shows now in front of the Oasis, it is zoned for the WZ3, which does conform to putting a marina in and conforming for the use in front of that property as well. So the next drawing just shows again the WZ3 zoning. And then we'll go to the next drawing, and it shows that the marina moorage proposed for this development conforms to the zoning. It protects the neighbors from the north. It's not a floating structure, so people can't tie up to it. There's safety precautions that can be taken to protect the people from the north, to protect that zoning in that area. But as it sits right now, it's conforming in all areas to the developer. We placed permits back in June of last year and stuff, and we've been conforming since the whole process has happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So I've been through the list of people that had registered to speak. Is there anyone else in the gallery that would like to come to this podium and speak on this public hearing? Okay, I'll ask a second time. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this public hearing? And a third time? All right. Thank you. So now it's open to questions of council, of staff, or of people that have spoken. Staff or council, do you have any questions for anyone? Councillor Barkwell.
Just a hypothetical question, if I could, to Mr. Hedquist. He put up that drawing of a proposed dock. And I just wondered, what if the property line of the Rackets Club extended out into the water further? Wouldn't it cut half of that dock off?
The ministry will always give the upland holder.
Would you go?
Please come up to the microphone. This is being recorded. Thank you.
So the ministry will always do their best for the upland holder. So they'll twist the lines, they'll make it curve. I can go back through the drawings and show how they'll always bend that. They'll make it work. They recognize that the yacht club, the breakwater is not in a proper place. So they do recognize that. So they'll shift the lines up. Of course, it's to always work with the municipalities. You guys work hand in hand to make sure that they have the safest marina at the end of the day and stuff. So they consider the fire, they consider all the mussels, of course, in that area, environmental arc sites as well in that. So, yeah.
Well, I won't
so the drawings
debate
would
the
never
issue
go
with you, but I'd like to know more about that.
Correct. But the difference with the perpendicular lines, if you went into a corner, you would actually remove waterfront lots, but that's not what the ministry does. They would cross over and completely eliminate a waterfront lot. Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? I have a question for Ms. Butler. And I just wanted clarification on something that you said.
Yes.
You mentioned that the first 100 feet of the 160-foot dock, I'm assuming it's 160 feet, I don't actually know, it will be public moorage and will tie into the new waterfront walkway. So I understand the second piece of that. Could you speak a little bit more about the first 100 feet being public moorage?
Yes, the first, actually this dock is what, 300-400 feet long. The first 100 feet of it is proposed to be a public accessible dock. It's not for moorage, it's for people to walk out, enjoy the view. There's benches proposed at the end So it's public use, but not moorage.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
I had just written it down incorrectly. I was going to ask our Director of Development Services about the possibility of Oasis applying to council for a variance, but we've heard that's a possibility. I have one other question for you, and I'm going to ask the question because I'm not really sure if I'm reading the slide that shows the Z1 and Z3 regulations and the setbacks. Is it a total of 10 feet, or is it 10 meters on both sides?
10 meters on both sides.
10 meters on each side, I mean.
That's right.
Yes.
Setback, yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone else on council that has questions? I have just one more. Okay.
May I ask a question or no?
I'm sorry, I didn't see who.
May I ask a question of planning? Just on what you just said here about the WZ3, WZ1? Question to be asked?
Not typically, but I'm just checking with our corporate officer. Okay, so a vote of council in favor, and does it have to be unanimous or majority? Or 2/3? I think it is unanimous. I think I've done that in the past. Okay, thank you. Council, opportunity to vote now. Would you entertain the gentleman in the gallery to ask a question for clarification of the Director of Development Services? If you do, please raise your hands. Oh, you don't have to raise both hands. Okay, so that's unanimous. So if you could come up to the mic and state your name and address, and then ask your question.
Hi, Steve Friesen of 987 Tronson in Kelowna. Just my question, Brad, is you mentioned WZ3 to WZ1 is the concern, but that is not what we're facing here. We're facing WZ3 to WZ2. WZ2 doesn't allow any structures, so the setback and all that in relation to it, it isn't addressed in what you're discussing. So I'm just wondering, what is the plan for that?
Yeah, through your worship, to answer the question from the gallery, the way that the current zoning bylaw amendment is constructed is the setbacks are determined by the perpendicular extension of the property lines that are of the upland parcel. So it's not really based on what the adjacent parcel is zoned as, whether it's WZ1 or WZ2. It just says that a 10-meter setback is required from that property line extended it. It doesn't really matter what the adjacent zoning is.
Thank you. So any other questions, council? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The gentleman that spoke from Trademark, is it Trademark? They said the ministry will adjust lines as per like the upland, correct? So we don't know where that would be yet until Oasis gets their plan in place. Then the ministry will come along and adjust that upland line. Am I correct? So the perpendicular concept
No,
isn't
they'll
necessarily
work with you guys, so it does. So they'll tend to move their lines to accommodate, because the breakwater is built in front of the Summerland Yacht Club. They'll tend to shift it more to the north to accommodate. So they understand there's commercial development, the whole front's all designated commercial development, so they actually just twist their lines a little bit to accommodate. So instead of the perpendicular lines coming off the Racket Club, which would cut it off immediately, they would tend, because it was never done properly back with the Summerland Yacht Club and the break wall being in there, and the water lease that's already in place, to try to accommodate that water lease, to shift and create more room for the Oasis project, they would tend to move their lines farther to the north. So they do recognize the Racket Club's there. So if the Racket Club ever decided to do a development there, they would tend to shift toward the public thing, but you guys would always have the choice, because that's a public swim area, that you guys do not want that in there, period. Okay,
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions, Council? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To our Director of Development Services. So when we take a look at the existing WZ3, it refers back to 7.5 docked and lifts. And when we go back and we take a look at the setbacks, which is 7.5.1F, and it carries through and it says, docks commonly owned and shared by 2 or more upland property owners are not required to provide any setback, provided that all affected upland property owners enter into the required license of occupation. So I take it that this section here is the section that you're removing, or is perceived to remove, to allow for the 5 and 10 meter setbacks. Is that, or am I reading this wrong? Thank you.
Through your worship, to Councillor Patton, I do believe that provision is being removed for strata docks. We're just indicating some clarity with regards to what the setback shall be. You know, if you're in a strata, you would still be subject to the proposed setbacks, whether it be 5 in the WZ1 area or 10 in the WZ3 area. So that is something that is changing as well with these proposed amendments.
So when we're speaking in the WZ3 as it sits right now, where it talks of 2 or more upland property owners, so I'm taking the 2 or more would be the owners of the Oasis development. Would that be considered the upland owner in that regard? Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, this happens when I'm stepping in from one of my staff members, but I actually got that wrong. I'm looking at the zoning bylaw, and that section is proposed to continue on under section 14.1.5, and it would be specifically included only in the WZ1 areas. But then I do see that we do have it as well as part of WZ3 under section 14.3.5C. But in this case, for the Oasis project, there's only one upland owner. From our interpretation of this bylaw, if there was 2 upland owners, then the idea behind it is that they can share a dock and not have to be subject to the setback regulations, and that's kind of the intent of that regulation.
Thank you, and that would be through the license of occupation.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You wanted to come forward?
Just to clarify, it's no different than the marina, right? So that would be one principal operator using that water lease property, having multiple things. So the Summerland Marina has about 200 and some people that are within it. So the Oasis is one person applying for that water lease with 32 people, just so you understand the process of that. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have another question of, I believe it was Robin that spoke about, and again, I may have written this down wrong. I've got a question mark next to it about we have made efforts to something and we have blocked the traffic on the, I think you said the north side. Could you come to the mic and respond to that? I just need clarity on that statement.
So yeah, when we originally looked at what we were proposing for a mortgage, we were actually looking at going larger in scale. But you know, listening to some of the feedback and kind of the temperature of where City Council was, we proactively behind the scenes wanted to work with a scenario that was more in line with something that you may otherwise be looking for. One of the things that we wanted to contemplate is that if the WZ2 zoning is approved, which it subsequently was in the adjacent property, to make sure that no boating traffic is coming through their water into our area. It's actually coming from the south side. So it mitigates some of the traffic that may have otherwise come through the WZ2 water, because as we understood it, that was one of the concerns of having that public area. So, you know, it didn't necessarily come up here. We were proactive, I felt, and tried to do that, you know, behind the scenes and listen to some of the concerns. So made the proposed mortgage smaller and worked with Tom and his group to kind of, and Donna, to restructure the mortgage where it would mitigate the traffic in areas that you have indicated you otherwise don't want to see it.
Good, that makes a lot more sense.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, if there are not any other questions, I will declare this public hearing closed. I've asked for three times if there is anyone else in the gallery, so I will close this public hearing. Thank you. And I'll now call to order the regular council evening meeting of July the 11th. This meeting is being recorded live and is streaming. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. Members of the public may access the meeting or participate in the following ways. You can attend council chambers in person, as many of you have done. If you wish to do so, please register in advance of the meeting by contacting the corporate officer at summerland.ca to ensure there's enough space. You can watch the meeting live or recorded. If you wish to watch the meeting, you may view it on the District of Summerland YouTube channel at youtube.com District of Summerland. You can register in advance to speak during the meeting. Members of the public who wish to provide comment during the public comment opportunities found under items 8 and 15 are asked to register in advance by contacting the corporate officer at summerland.ca with the following information: your name, civic address, and how you are participating, whether in person, by telephone, or through Zoom. Further details will have been provided upon registration. And fourth, you can request to speak during the meeting. Those who have not registered in advance but wish to speak during the public comment opportunities may be given the opportunity, time permitting. After I have provided everyone who has pre-registered with an opportunity to comment, the floor will be opened to those in council chambers and those on the conference line. The conference line can be accessed by dialing 778-907-2071 and entering meeting ID 506-489-9374 and passcode 485186. Corporate officer, are there any late items to introduce? No? Okay. So council, I'll ask for adoption of the agenda as presented, please. Councillor Van Alphen, Councillor Traynor, all in favor? Great, thank you. And adoption of the minutes from our council meeting of June the 27th, the regular evening council meeting. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Trainer, all in favor? Good. Now moving on to 5.1, which is the bylaw from this public hearing we just closed, zoning amendment bylaw, water use regulations number 2022-024. Okay, so council is unable to hear any more information, but we are able to ask our Director of Development Services for any answers to questions that are for clarification in nature. Does anyone have a question like that? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As Ms. Butler from Macquarie talked about, the only one portion of this bylaw that they cannot meet is the 10-meter setback from the dock to the proposed water zone line of the Oasis. And do we have an idea of how much they're shy?
Through your worship to Councillor Patton, yes, that's correct. It's 14.3.5B of our proposed amendment bylaw, which includes the perpendicular extension of the side property line, as well as the setback of 10 meters. The proposal I'm aware of, because it is an active application that they have, is a setback of 0.9 meters, and as well as indicated by the applicants in the public hearing, the interpretation of the projection of the property line is also of issue as well. So in order to allow for that development, there will be a variance required.
Thanks, Brad. One other question. As what it relates to perpendicular, so once the lot line has been changed in our documentation to the shoreline, is that going to impede it, or is it going to help? Or is it kind of a moot point in that regard?
Through your worship to Councillor Patton, I think it's difficult to say. I think because the shoreline is kind of goes in front of their development. It goes out and then back in. But in general, I would say it would impede it further versus the other way around. Again, I don't know where that line would sit right now. We haven't figured that out yet.
Thanks, Brad. So if this was to move forward or not move forward, this would affect all the WZ3 zonings, water zonings, not just moving forward. So there's not an exception for the Oasis, but if this moves forward, then it affects all WZ3s as we move forward in the future. Am I correct in that regard?
Your worship to Councillor Patton, yeah, that's correct. As well as the WZ1 zones, which are changing slightly, but not significantly from what it was before.
Thank you.
I was going to ask that last question as well, just to make a point of it. So thank you for that. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if it wasn't for the breakwater, and even if the lines did come out perpendicular to the lot line, we wouldn't have this issue. Right now, it's the breakwater that's causing an existing breakwater that's been there for generations is what's causing this concern. And as the gentleman from Trademark said, the ministry would adjust the lines And, you know, if, let's say the racket club changed hands 5 years from now or tomorrow, that lines would be adjusted again with consultation of the council of the day and staff of the day. So basically what we're dealing with, as it was said earlier, is it's a hardship because of the breakwater is what's causing the grief here. If it wasn't for the breakwater, we wouldn't have this conversation at all. Thank you.
I was just going to ask.
That's a question.
We don't have the motion on the floor yet, so Brad.
If it's a question, I'll try to take a track at answering that. Yeah, I think it's definitely accurate that the breakwater plus the yacht club lease extending in front of the upland property owner for that development is a factor. I do want to advise council though, like the way that we would evaluate those factors is through a variance application. Like that would be similar to what the Crown would do in terms of reviewing those property lines. We would be looking at all those factors as part of a variance application.
I have one question for you, Brad, and I just want to make sure that I have it clear in my mind. The perpendicular aspect of it is something that is determined, or I guess the question is that something that is determined by the province, or if this goes passes the third reading tonight, and that perpendicular piece is in there, does that override anything with the province, or is it kind of unnecessary to have it in there?
I don't think it would override anything of the province. They have their own jurisdiction. We have ours. Generally, we tried to create as much consistency as we can with these water use regulations in light of the provincial general use permissions. Actually, the progression is where we got from linear before to perpendicular. We had kind of linear extension of the property lines throughout all of our zones originally when we were drafting these regulations, and the Crown actually said, well, no, we don't interpret it that way for single-use docks for their general permission. So that's when we went to the perpendicular extension of the shoreline is for those water zone 1 areas. But if you recall at the last council meeting at first and second, we wanted to have our own consistent regulation, which is again, fair comment of interpreting this. So that's where we changed it again to allow for perpendicular extension for all docks. But again, for every situation, like the example just brought up with the breakwater, we would be looking at those factors as part of a variance if it's required from us in our zoning bylaw.
Good, thank you for that. Okay, any other questions of staff? Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Barkwell to bring forward a motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's a slight clarification in the motion that we put on the table for discussion tonight. It says that, reads that the zoning amendment bylaw water use regulation number 2022-24 be read a third time as amended by inserting the phrase from the general trend of the shoreline following perpendicular extension in section 13.4.5B. So this is for third reading, not fourth like we normally do, I guess, as well. Okay. What, this is just to, if I could continue, explain, maybe I see some blank looks. Yeah, we've had some discussion, and the amendment I made last meeting when we had this was to make our bylaw consistent with the WZ1 zone and the provincial regulations, but it wasn't really clear in the wording of it last time. So this is just to further clarify that the regulations as we have it in the WZ3 zone is consistent with the WZ1 zone, which is consistent with the provincial regulations.
Thank you, Councillor Barkwell. I'm looking for us. Yeah, but even seeing it, I'm still, you have to be careful how you read it. Councillor,
Let me ask you a question.
we do still have time, but the motion is on the floor, but it has to be seconded yet. Okay.
I know the answer.
I'm just going to, you know the answer. Okay, I'm just going to wait for Councillor Trainer, and no, you're good, Councillor Trainer? Okay. It is on the board. Okay. Yeah, or on the screen. Okay, so Councillor Barkwell has made the motion. It still needs to be seconded. Councillor Trainer, thank you. Okay, now further discussion. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in our regulations and with the WZ2 zone, which the Racquet Club is, I can see why the Oasis has gone to a 100 meters for public walkway, because that's the maximum dock length that's allowed in a WZ2 zone. So logically, that if their WZ2 water zone, if the maximum length of their moorage can only be 100 meters and the Oasis starts at 100 meters, then for their moorage for their development, and there shouldn't be an impact in regards to this WZ2 zone. I guess where I'm going with this is that it's rationalized in regards to the lengths. The problem that I'm having is that if we do it for in regards to the Oasis development, that we will be affecting any other WZ3 that does come forward. Now, my understanding also is that there can be through development variance that this could be varied, but not at this point for the Oasis. That would be another more time, more money, another hearing, and for that. So that's my sketchy part. I understand it. I see the logic behind the numbers. The problem that I'm having with is how it's going to affect future docks as they come forward with the WZ3. So I guess not so much a question, but a comment.
Comments are fine. We're discussing at this point. Councillor Barkwell.
A little history might be in order here to remind us how we got to this point. This was first sort of alerted to council as a potential development site in December 2018. We had first reading in March of 2019. We had a second reading with the presentation of the developer on March 25th of 2019. We had a public hearing April 23rd. Each one of those presentations from the developer said, no, there wasn't going to be a marina. And staff at that time assured us that there couldn't be a marina because council controlled the water in front of the Oasis development. So we proceeded with approval of the project on that basis. And if anybody doubts us, you can review the videotape for yourself. Each time we were assured that there was going to be no marina. Otherwise, there were going to be different questions and different public comment. So, and then we see from Donna Butler's letter, 6 months or less later, they're talking to staff about a marina. Nobody told council. And then there's another thing, most of these council members were on council when we introduced the WZ water zones. And when I discovered in the second term that there was no regulations at all with regard to our commercial zone, I couldn't believe it. And I had a lot of back and forth with our staff person, and he kind of showed me how it read, and sure enough. And so we asked council and staff to bring in regulations. I mean, why wouldn't you have proper regulations for your commercial water zone that are consistent with your regulations for your the rest of your zones, right? Your rest of your water zones. So if in the meantime the Oasis has purchased a property that has a yacht club in front of it and doesn't have any suitable land or water area in front of it for their own dock or the dock they would like to have, I mean, I could see they'd then have a dock for visitors and such like that. Well, then that's the way it is. But it doesn't preclude council from putting in proper regulations. The only way to properly deal with this is through a variance process. We cannot be considering an exception for these guys. We shouldn't even be talking about it necessarily, but then of course it is proper to talk about the effect that new regulations might have on various people in the community. We consider that, but really the only proper way to deal with this is through a variance process where the public can really have their say on, it's not just a minor thing here. 48 slip yacht, dock is a huge community concern. Could be an election issue, I don't know. But certainly we need to have the opportunity for public input on this issue, not the owners of Oasis flooding the council chambers on the implementation of the regulations. So, and the other aspect why we should go forward with this is that there's two council members here that are not here tonight. And if we went with a variance process, if they wanted to proceed, then they would have the opportunity to have their say about it and hear what the public have to say. So the only fair thing, properly, I feel, is to continue with the regulations. And if there's something that should be different from what I consider to be normal, proper regulations that should have been brought into place when we brought in the water zones, then we can deal with it then in the proper way. So that's my speech.
Thank you for the history again, Councillor Barkwill. No, I'm not being sarcastic. I do take exception to a couple of things that you said. The whole idea of a public hearing is to hear from the public, and we can't dictate who it is that's going to speak to us, whether it's Oasis or potential owners of the units or whatever. And I believe, at least this is what I wrote down, and who knows, I believe that Ms. Butler was speaking of, no, maybe it was Mr. Nasser, Nasruddin, thank you, was speaking of they had modified their application to a 32 slip moorage, so not 48. So those are the only two things that I just wanted to respond on. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Barkwill.
That only goes to my point. What are we dealing with, right? It should be dealt with in a proper process where the plans are put forward to the public so they know the size and location of any sort of a dock. In a situation like that, next to the Rackets Club, it's the yacht club is there in a historical place. The Rackets Club is there, and then there's the Rotary Beach. So you have to deal with what you got. And if you're going to do something like that, then there has to be a public input process about the proposal, not this is about the regulations. So it's we don't, yeah, you see my point.
I do see your point. We're talking about the regulations that, regardless of who you are, where you're situated on the lake. Okay, so any further discussion on this? Okay, so I'm going to ask Kendra to reread the amended motion, please.
So we did catch one thing in the motion, so we'll just need to do a quick amendment. It's that the zoning amendment bylaw water use regulations number 2022-024 be read a third time as amended by inserting the phrase from the general trend of the shoreline following perpendicular extension in section, and the motion reads section 1345B, but the section should be 1435B. So if we could just have a quick amendment to the main motion to correct that that section, and then we can vote on the main, or vote on that and then vote on the main motion as amended.
Okay, Councillor Barkwell,
I move that the motion be amended so that instead of section 13.45.b, it read 14.3.5b.
thank you. Seconder? Councillor Trainer? Okay, I don't think we have to have a discussion on the this little housekeeping thing. Thank you for catching that, Kendra. I am going to call the question on the amendment. All in favor? Okay. And now, any further discussion on the motion as amended? Councillor Barkwell, or Councillor Patton?
So should this go through, the proponents, or, well, we're the proponents, the Oasis would have the opportunity to address us with a variance to the side yard setback of the water line in the WZ3.
That is my understanding. Yes, I'm seeing a nod from our director.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, Councillor Van Elfen.
Question through our planner. So if we go forward with this perpendicular lines and Oasis applies for a variance, does the province come in and put in a new imaginary line to the north foreshore?
To your worship, to Councillor Van Elfen, again, they're different jurisdictions, so I'm not too sure what their line would be. Maybe Tom's correct; they have different approaches with different angles with regards to their situation. Maybe they will look at the breakaway and the current yacht club lease, for example, in determining their line. But at least what it will do is allow for their proposal to be continue forward as proposed from the district's perspective.
Councillor Barkwell.
Question to staff. If we proceed this way and there's an application which requires a variance, so who approves it first, the province or the District of Summerland, or would they come to Summerland with an approved proposal that the province had agreed to, or what if we approve something and the province didn't agree to it?
Yeah, I think, thanks for that question there, Councillor Barkwell, through your worship. Yeah, I think whether it's us first or the Crown first, again, we're a different level of jurisdiction. We have our own process through zoning. So if we approve their development variance permit, say they didn't come forward in the future, they would still require a Crown authorization and approval. And we would still get a referral from the Crown for that application. And at that point in time, we would say, well, yeah, this has already been the subject of a variance, and therefore it's consistent with that application. So we don't have any concerns. But the Crown is not beholden to our decision. It's a little bit different than the ELC. It's completely separate from our jurisdiction of decision making here.
No, I'm sorry, you cannot. Okay, so are there any other items for discussion or debate or questions of our Director of Development Services? Okay, So we are voting on the bylaw, and remember that we are voting on a bylaw. We're not voting on Oasis at this point. We're voting on a bylaw. And I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Van Elfen and Councillor Patton are opposed, so that carries. If I could just say one thing, I really hope that you come forward with a variance, a development variance for the dock. I understand from all three of you that there has been concerted effort to make sure that it is as close as possible to what the council would like to see see down there at the waterfront in front of Oasis in terms of the dock. So I really hope that you will come forward, but that's something that goes through our Director of Development Services, and he will bring it to council so we can further discuss the variance. Okay, thank you. Councillor Burkwell.
I'm puzzled. I don't think council has really said what they'd like to see down there. You know, and it's kind of awkward for all developments, you know, they don't know what we might like or might not like. Yeah.
Well, I was speaking for myself. I would like to see the development variance come forward so that we can have another discussion in council on this particular dock, not the general bylaws. Because really that's the way it needs to be done, as you said. Okay, so on to the mayor's report. And if you give me a second, I'll have to bring it up. All right. After a 2-year hiatus, it was wonderful to celebrate Canada Day in Memorial Park with Summerland residents and visitors. Ongoing global events only emphasize how much we have to be grateful for in Summerland in Canada, including the generosity of Indigenous hosts who share land with those of us who, as newcomers or through ancestral immigration, have chosen to live in Canada. It was a sea of red and white in the park that day, and everyone enjoyed the cake, ice cream, hamburgers, and hot dogs, and the Summerland Fire Department and the fire truck, especially the youngsters. On behalf of council, my thanks to the Summerland Legion for organizing this celebration and the many Legion volunteers who cooked and served the food. Also on July the 1st, I was pleased to open the Bluegrass Festival, another Summerland event to return after a 2-year break. Judging by the number of campers on RVs at the Summerland Rodeo grounds and the number of people enjoying the music in the stands, the festival was well intended. Denise Trudeau is the president of the Summerland Bluegrass Society, and on behalf of council, thank you, Denise, for your leadership in bringing this music festival back to our community. It is not an easy task at the best of times. And speaking of that, and I do not have this written down, so I may stumble a bit, the Summerland Community Market has started again on Main Street in Summerland. It started June the 25th. And this is another group that have persevered with, through the pandemic. They followed all of the fairly strenuous protocols for community markets and farmers markets, and now they're back on Main Street in Summerland, and it's really good to see so many people out and about and enjoying the wares that are there. And finally, I would like to say thank you on behalf of council and congratulations to George Pugh, our deputy fire department, Deputy Fire Chief, who after many, many years of service at the Summerland Fire Department is retiring. So thank you, George, for all that you have done to keep us safe here in Summerland. And that's my mayor's report tonight. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, I wanted to recognize the great work of our first responders in Summerland, who put on a special community event at the Summerland Fire Department last Saturday from 1 to 2 p.m. Ambulances, a police cruiser, and all our fire equipment were on display with cool drinks and freezies on hand to cool off participants, from flashing lights to displays, and the opportunity to interact with first responders and their equipment, including an operational fire hose. Fun was had by all, and the effort was a great success. Special thanks to Chief Rob Robinson in his efforts to coordinate this special event. Also on the weekend, Okanagan Grand Fondo ran through our community on Sunday, with more than 3,000 participants coming from across North America to compete in this cycling event. Special thanks to our public works and infrastructure crews who worked hard to prepare the portion of the route that runs through Summerland, which required patching and sweeping to make things safe and clear for those fast-moving bikes. We continue to monitor water levels in the lake closely, and before the weekend, the lake was at 12.5 centimeters above full pool, with inflows in the lake being about the same as outflows down through the water control infrastructure. While the heavy rains received last week did cause some localized flooding in communities around the lake, the overall effect on the lake level has been manageable. Environment Canada is expecting a drying spell this week, and ultimately the expectation is that the drying trend with a lack of inflow should start to bring lake levels down. In terms of Summerland specifically, we have heard reports of impacts of the high water table in some parts of the community, but we have had no further requests for sandbags since June 17th, so it appears residents are feeling that things are stabilizing. With the heavy rains in recent days, there were areas of the community where drainage infrastructure was temporarily overwhelmed and where low-lying road structures and surfaces gathered water. Our crews were quick to get out to those locations and divert water, and in some cases to use hydrovac trucks to remove the water off-site to avoid impacts to residences. And with that, I conclude my report. Thank you.
Any questions on either of our reports, Council? Okay. We will move on to item 8, which is the first of 2 public comment opportunities. A maximum of 15 minutes in total, 2 minutes per speaker. Comments and questions must pertain to items on the agenda. Is there anybody in the gallery? I don't have anyone here on my list that wishes to speak, or is there anyone on the line? Okay, no one? All right, so we'll go on to item 9, development reports. 9.1, official community plan amendment, 13609 Dixon Avenue, bylaw number 2022-027, and zoning amendment bylaw number 2022-028, Z22-009. Please go ahead, Brad.
Thank you, Your Worship. The district is in receipt of an official community plan amendment as well as a rezoning application to facilitate a high-density residential development with a health services use at 13609 Dixon Avenue, which is shown here on the map. Currently, the subject property is zoned residential medium density, shown by that brown area. As well, it is currently designated as medium density residential in the official community plan. So the proposal is to amend the OCP to change the designation from medium density to high density residential. It is also proposed to consider rezoning the property from residential medium density to a site-specific residential high-density zone. And the site-specific provisions would allow for health services, including an ancillary pharmacy use, daycare, as well as a reduction in the parking requirements from 1.5 or 1 and a number of different calculations per unit to just a standardization of one parking stall per unit. So just goes to explain a little further, the site-specific proposal here would allow for our apartments, which is unique for the high-density residential zone, something that's not included in the medium density, as well as cluster housing of apartments and townhouses. But also health services would be an accessory use proposed for the site-specific provision, and then a pharmacy ancillary to health services. So a comparison of the zones from going from residential medium density to the proposal of the residential high density. There's an increase in lot coverage from 40% to 50%. There's also an increase in the allowable floor area ratio from 0.6 to 1.2. And then also there's a change in the height, as you can see, going from 3 stories to 4 stories. And then there's also larger setbacks required for higher density developments. So the official community plan provides a number of criteria for evaluating new high density designations within the OCP. This criteria seeks to have compatible development that has direct access to major collector roads, pedestrian access to facilities, parks, and schools, and is either located in close proximity to the downtown area or also the lower town area. It also looks for consistency with design guidelines and wanting to fill a range of demographics to address the needs of the community. There's also some provisions in the official community plan with regards to affordable housing. The OCP policies seek to improve affordable housing options and ensure that there is affordable housing units available within the downtown core. And the applicant is Parkdale Housing Society. Do you want to mention that? And their goal is to build another affordable housing project to meet the needs of Summerland's aging population. Okay, and if as council is aware, the district is currently undergoing public consultation for a new draft downtown neighborhood action plan. And in this draft plan, this area that that's identified in that red circle is proposed to be an area for potential redevelopment in close proximity to the downtown core, and has been targeted for potential high density residential uses in the future. It includes personal services, health services, care facilities, and office uses that service residents in proximity to the downtown, but do not compete with the retail commercial uses of the downtown core. And so definitely this proposal is in conformance with the downtown neighborhood action plan. So the concept plan proposed that is the subject of this rezoning and OCP amendment, it's proposed as a 4-story building by Parkdale Housing Society. There'll be affordable rental housing on the top 3 stories, as well as potentially a primary healthcare center at the ground level. And if not that, then maybe a daycare or other health services uses as part of the overall proposal. So again, looking specifically at the concept plan for the proposed development, I mentioned already there's ground floor health offices facing Dixon Avenue with parking designated for them in the rear of the building. There's a total of 81 apartments proposed on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors. And as well, there's a rooftop patio proposed as part of the development. So in discussion of this proposal, staff notes that there is, although it's not directly adjacent to a collector road, there is fairly easy access to Jubilee Road West, which is a collector in the district of Summerland. Its proximity to the downtown is ideal, I think, from staff's perspective. It's right behind the Nestor's grocery store. The site design does show a landscape front setback and as well as additional building separation to the south, which is an existing low density residential area, as shown in this map here. So that does create a bit of a buffer area from that existing low density residential uses. And there's a medium density residential development to the north of the proposed development. As well, this location at Dixon Avenue is one of the two preferred locations for the primary care healthcare feasibility study, which is a study that the district is working in partnership with the Division of Family Practice. So we've identified this location as a potential location for the primary healthcare center, as well as another location within the district. As well, it's an easily accessible location. Especially if there are road improvements to include like a sidewalk from Jubilee, it can, there would be potentially an easy sidewalk connection in the future to the downtown core. And then, as I've already mentioned, the proposal is in consistency with the proposed draft downtown neighborhood action plan. With regards to the request for the site-specific provision for parking to be reduced, the request is one parking stall per dwelling unit. In the plan itself, there's a total of 111 parking stalls identified and shown on the site plan, as you can see, a majority of which are on surface parking behind the building, but there's also indoor parking on the first floor level on that one of the L shapes of the building there. You can see the stalls. There's opportunity for shared parking as well with the health services use. Generally those patrons will be more during the daytime versus maybe visitors to the building being more at nighttime, as an example. So there is some flexibility there. Again, the proximity of the development and being in walking distance to a lot of amenities is a positive when considering the parking reduction, that perhaps as the grand total of number of vehicles may be reduced, given that a lot of these people living in this facility could be walking to access services. And then also the target demographic is primarily seniors, and general trends with seniors and is they don't have as much vehicles as the younger demographics, especially if there's easy access to services. So this proposal was presented to the Advisory Planning Commission in June. APC comments included some questions on what consultation has been done with existing in-town doctors and whether a fourth pharmacy was really needed in the community. Staff did mention that the pharmacy use was ancillary to the proposed health center use in reply to the APC comments. There was also questions on the extent of the parking variance, if cash in lieu was an option, which it isn't for residential use, and also on the definition of affordability, which the executive director of the Parkdale Housing Society answered with regards to that question. Some other comments from the APC. In general, most of the APC was in favor of this use and this development in this location. Most of the comments or critique actually dealt with the actual design of the building, and perhaps were more form and character related, which would be the subject of a multifamily development permit that would be required at a later point in time. There was some concern about the EV stalls being located directly in front of the healthcare center, and there was a suggestion that these stalls be moved to a different location on the property, and staff's also passed along those comments to the applicant. And then also, again, like I mentioned, some concerns on the design, with it being a fairly bulky building along the plane of Dixon Avenue. There's generally a lack of green space, and that there should be the requirement for sidewalk and on-street parking with the proposed development. But in general, in summary, the Advisory Planning Commission was supportive of the proposed development and provided the resolutions that you see on the slide for both the OCP amendment as well as the zoning bylaw amendment. So in summary, staff sees this as a supported proposal. We think it adds to further densification of the downtown core, which was a stated goal of the downtown neighborhood plan. It's got great access to services, with the grocery store close by, but as well as other services located within the downtown core. It's already identified as a supportable location for a primary healthcare center, which is a District of Summerland need in the community. So that's another positive. And then as well, it would further support a walkable community by having 81 residential units in close proximity to our downtown core. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. We're proposing first and second reading tonight with a public hearing to be scheduled on August 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Councillor Van Elfen, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rental homes targeted at seniors 55 plus.
To your worship, to Councillor Van Elfen, I think that is the intent.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a few. One slide, and this is just, I just don't understand what FAR, it shows the proposed residential high density, 1.2, and then in brackets, bonus to 1.6. What does the bonus mean?
I think that's an existing density bonus provision we have within our high density residential zone. I'll have to actually pull it out here as to what exactly it states. If you bear with me, if you're interested.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Sorry.
I want to take the pressure off you a little bit because
I'll come back to you.
That's fine. I have a question that is probably directed to the proponent, and I know that Ian McIntosh and Ms. Kramer are in the audience. So my question is, the 81 apartments, are they like different sizes, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom? Have you gotten that far in your planning?
Yes, we have. We have studio apartments, 1 bedrooms, and some 2 bedrooms planned as well. The actual square footage of each currently eludes me, but I believe it will be 16 studios and 16 2 bedrooms, and the remaining will be all 1 bedrooms.
Thank you. Good. Perfect timing, Brad. Thank you, Allison. Or sorry, I'm sorry if your name is not Allison. It's Charmaine. Thank you. I don't know, I was thinking Allison. Thank you, Charmaine.
Okay, thank you for that time as well. So yes, under our residential high density zone, 10.9.5C allows for floor area ratio to be increased to 1.6 if the owner of the land proposed to be developed pays to the district prior to the time of building permit issuance in the amount of equal of $2.50 per square foot of additional gross floor area to be deposited in a reserve fund for parks, cultural, and recreational assets, and the necessary fire department equipment to service higher multi-story buildings. So it's basically a density bonus provision.
Thank you. So that's already in the zoning bylaw. Thank you. Councillor Traynor.
My question is also for the Parkdale Housing Society. We know that there's a need for affordable housing in Summerland. Do you have a wait list right now for seniors looking for homes, and what does that wait list look like?
Currently, we run 2 different wait lists, one for Parkdale Lodge, one for Angus Place. But together we have 170 people on the wait list for affordable housing right now. We're actually averaging 1 person going on the wait list per business day at this moment.
So this building could potentially then really help with that wait list. Those people on that wait list, I assume, would apply to live in this facility?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Don't leave this podium yet. I have a follow-up, just checking on something. So the residents that were, that have been moved, that have moved to other areas, are those people included on the 170, or is there not?
Sorry, no, they're not included on the wait list. As they're settled into their new homes, I don't foresee them making another move. This is, the 170 is all outside applicants. None of those are internal applicants.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a lot of people. Thank you. Councillor Van Elfen.
If no other questions, Madam Mayor, I can put the resolution on the floor if you wish.
I have another question.
Sorry.
Is there anyone else? Okay, so in just a moment, I will come back to you. Councillor Barkwell and then Councillor Patton.
Since the topic of the wait list and such comes up, is there a preference given to longtime Summerland residents or anything like that in your facility? How's it done?
As per our bylaws, first consideration is given to those of Summerland. How we choose our people that we move forward with. First, we look at the need. You know, what situation are they currently in? Are they very close to homelessness? What's the current situation? And then after that, are they already community members of Summerland, or would they be moving into the area? And of course, all things being equal, if they're already in Summerland, they would get first consideration.
Councillor Van Elfen's thinking, oh, do councillors who provide approval get priority?
Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you tell me, maybe for Ian, or how many units are existing at the site right now that are being rented out?
So currently on that piece of property is Legion Village, 20 duplex type apartments with cinder block, very low ceilings. We have been working for the last 6 months to relocate the people that are living there and getting them moved over to either Angus Place or Parkdale Lodge. So currently out of 20 apartments, there's only 5 people left over at Legion Village right now. 2 of those people have decided to look for different types of housing as opposed to moving into the society. And we are just waiting for suites to turn over for the remaining 3.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I just have one last question, and I guess this is probably for our Director of Development Services. Thank you for answering those questions, Charmaine. In regard to the sidewalk, right now, I guess my question is, right now, the sidewalk on Jubilee is just on the south side. Is there consideration, and I wasn't quite sure in the way that the report was, is the consideration for an additional sidewalk on the north side of Jubilee, or is it along Dixon Avenue? Or maybe it's both, I'm not sure.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, definitely with regards to our subdivision development servicing bylaw, the developer is required to upgrade the road improvements up to the center line of the road, which would also include a sidewalk to be constructed in the very front of this property, as well as on-street parking, which we discussed as part of the presentation. As for the connection to get into the downtown core, I think that's something that might happen with the development of those 3 or 4 single-family residentials in the future. It wouldn't be a requirement of this development. Now, if council thinks it is a priority, they could, perhaps consider as part of this rezoning application in consultation with the applicant. That would be something to discuss, yes.
Okay. So hearing that with the sidewalk going in on Dixon Avenue then, and there already being a sidewalk on Jubilee South, the south side of Jubilee, I mean, is it, and it probably isn't, but is it as simple as putting a crosswalk to connect the two without having to, put another sidewalk along Jubilee? I don't know if it's as easy as that.
Could be something we want to consider in that location. We also have another development on Dixon Ave that's been recently approved by council as well, and they're going to be having to connect the sidewalk along their frontage as well. So there might be an opportunity to create a crosswalk at that location as well.
Right, great. Okay. Are there any other questions? Councillor Barkle.
Nothing really hinges on this question, and I know you're a long ways down the road now, but I was wondering if, or maybe I was even a little surprised that it was only a four-story building. Was a 5-story or taller considered at all, and just a discount not economical, or what?
We looked at a ton of options with respect to all of that. And generally, as the planning department I'm sure knows, is the amount of stuff you can put on a site is generally dictated by parking. So the reason we don't have more floor space and more height is because we don't have room for any more parking. So unless you go underground at an exorbitant price, which we can't afford, we've pretty much maxed everything possible, and including the revised parking requirement.
Ian, could I just ask you to turn the mic off again? Thank you. I have another question for you, and that is, in the presentation, there was something about, the green space, a comment made by the Advisory Planning Committee. I'm wondering if the I guess the design of having the rooftop patios, if that is a way of satisfying that lack of green space. I'm not sure if that, if they're weighed equally or how it works in your world, but that's just my question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you, Your Worship. But it could be. Definitely, we're actually going to be weighing that discussion as part of another development tonight. I think we would get more detail in the development permit stage as to where those landscaped areas are, how much amenity area is being provided for the proposal, where we actually do those calculations. Right now, all of the plans submitted are conceptual only for the purpose of the rezoning, but we would get finer grained detail as part of that development permit, and perhaps that could be something that council considers, the rooftop patio as part of that multifamily development permit.
Okay, thank you very much. All good, council, for questions? Thank you. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That the official community plan amendment bylaw number 2022-027 be read a first and second time, and that the process as outlined in the report from Planner 2 dated July 11, 2022 be considered appropriate. Consultation for the purpose of Section 475 of the Local Government Act and that zoning amendment bylaw number 2022-028 be read a first and second time, and that a public hearing be held on August 22nd, 2022 to receive public feedback on the official community plan amendment bylaw number 2022-027 and zoning bylaw amendment bylaw number 2022-028.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Trainer, and further discussion. No? No.
I was just going to say, this project, which is great, makes me feel old because the previous project was great. And my grandmother was the second person, Mrs. Armour was first, and Mrs. Atkinson second, and now that's gone, or going to be. Yeah, I'm living longer than buildings.
You're funny. Okay, any other comments, amusing or otherwise? I'll call the question. Oh, you're ready to vote, are you? I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed, so that carries unanimously. Thank you, Brad. Thank you for bringing this forward, both Ian and Charmaine. It's good to see this affordable option for seniors in Summerland. Thank you. All right, so our second development report tonight is development permit and development variance permit for 8710 Tomlin Street, DP 21-023 and DVP 21-030.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the district's in receipt of two applications, one for a multifamily development permit application for form and character for 2 additional townhousing buildings, as well as an application for a retaining wall variance to height of the retaining wall in conjunction with that development permit for the 2 townhouses, which I'll get into. So the subject property is currently zoned residential medium density, and it has a split OCP designation of medium density residential and low density residential. However, the proposed buildings comply with the residential medium zone. And I already mentioned with regards to the retaining wall being a separate proposal. With regards to the form and character development permit, there's 2 new townhousing buildings being proposed, a total of 8 new units. There are 8 existing units on the property which are proposed to remain at the front of the property, and I'll show the orientation, but these are the 2 buildings that are being proposed to be located at the rear of the property. So you can see the orientation. There's 2 new townhousing buildings that are facing each other at the rear of the property. There's the existing medium density multifamily building. It has 8 units in front of it. It also is proposing to reconfigure the front yard in front of the existing multifamily building. Right now, if you go past the site, there's just kind of a long driveway in the front of the property. What's proposed here is to create 2 clear access points to the property on either side, east and west sides of the property, as well as add in new landscaping and also a clear pedestrian path from the front of the building onto Tomlin Street. With regards to building design, the proposed buildings are broken up into 2 smaller fourplexes. Each unit has a clearly distinctive and visible entrance, as you can see by the different colors on their front doors. There's a variation of materials and colors on the face of the building to avoid duplication of materials for the 2 buildings. With regards to parking, staff notes that the proposed parking plan is an improvement from the current non-conforming parking situation in the front yard. All of the parking stall requirements are being met by those areas that are highlighted in this map. It's a bit busy, I apologize. But you can see that there is a number of parking stalls. 10 are under the buildings and accessed from the back of the building. And the other 12 are located, those are the blue highlight areas at the surface around both the front building as well as the rear yard of the existing building. There's also a proposal to have additional juniper hedge to screen the parking stalls in the front yard. And the parking stall is exceeded by a total of 2, so it's got 2 additional parking spaces proposed. With regards to landscaping, I already mentioned the defined front yard. We have hedges proposed along certain boundaries. They're the kind of the black lines you can see on this plan. And again, it's kind of hard to see. Those are proposed hedges to kind of delineate spaces throughout the site. There's a proposed amenity area at the rear of the property, which would be, it's actually the intent and purpose of the retaining wall variance, which I'll get into. You can see the amenity area to the back there, as well as a new amenity area created in the front yard with some additional bushes proposed there. So with regards to the retaining wall variance, specifically, you can see on a close-up here where this retaining wall is proposed to be located. It's right against the rear property line of the subject property. The retaining wall variance is to increase the retaining wall height from 2.0 meters to 2.5 meters at the rear of the property. And again, the main intent here is to create a more functional flat amenity area for the 2 new townhouse buildings that are proposed to be located at the back. With regards to APC comments, the APC generally provides some comments on the blockiness of the design of the buildings, but as well as the positive use of coloring. There was a suggestion to add windows to the sides of the buildings. And there was a question of whether the existing 2 trees will be removed. And the applicant advised the APC that they are going to be removed because they are currently dying, and the new landscaping will be planted in its place. There were some concerns discussed by APC members with regards to the height of the retaining wall in proximity to the adjacent landowner to the north. There was a suggestion from the APC to potentially step back the retaining wall to reduce the visual impact of the wall from that adjacent property owner. But ultimately, the APC did decide and was supportive to allow the development permit to move forward, as it was seen to be a functional use of space for infill development in close proximity to the downtown core. So in summary, staff feel that overall this development is will create an improved frontage along Tomlin Street with removing that long driveway in the front of the existing building and introducing a landscaped area with a defined pedestrian access. As well, the retaining wall, as well as the 2 buildings, is going to create more functional amenities space for the residents at the back of the development. And then finally, as well, staff see this in general as a compatible form of infill development in close proximity to the downtown neighborhood area. It's currently zoned residential medium density, and it is seen to be kind of consistent with the area for the form of development. And so for that reason, staff is recommending that council proceed with both the development permit as well as the variance for the retaining wall height. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Council, do you have questions of our Director of Development Services? Councillor Trainer.
I was just reading over one of the letters that was submitted along with this report, and the homeowners have concerns about drainage issues in that area. Or are water issues prevalent in that area, especially with our changing climate and recent torrential rainfalls?
Through your worship to Councillor Trainer, I think I can answer that, but it might be good to ask the applicant that question too, because they've lived on the property and for a number of years. But this area actually was subject to a recent event. It actually is spelled out in the correspondence from the neighbor just this last week. There was some stormwater drainage that was going through this property with the big flash floods we were having going into the north property area. I'm not too sure if the retaining wall will improve things or not, and perhaps it would, but through catching that drainage and redirecting it rather than the current situation, which is all down gradient slope into the neighbor's yard, that might be something the council can ask the applicant.
So would this new development address drainage issues for those? Like if they're going to be putting in 8 units and there's going to be a lot of concrete, there's probably going to be a lot of runoff. So would those 2 buildings have a specific drainage system that would address water?
Through your worship to Councillor Trainer, normally when it comes to on-site drainage for this scale of development, we review it at the building permit stage. We have a general principle requirement that you have to treat your stormwater on site. You can't direct it to the district's road right away, as well as an adjacent neighbor. So, you know, generally amenity areas, landscaped areas are used for stormwater retention on site, and so that would be something that we would be reviewing as part of the building permit process.
Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Brad, could you, in regards to the retaining wall at the rear of the property would be about 8 feet now. And is the amenity space calculation that close that the wall could not be stepped back?
Through your worship to Councillor Patton, that's a good question. We do have a provision in the zoning bylaw that for the calculation of our amenity areas, that they have to be a certain dimension. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, to create a functional area, a functional amenity area. So that's, I think, what the developer is trying to create here is to create a flat functional area that can actually be utilized versus, you know, stepping back 2 retaining walls can, you know, basically that lower level is somewhat not as useful as an amenity area. It's definitely something that we could consider, though, as part of this in light of the concerns of the neighbor to the north, that we do consider the amenity area on the lower portion of that retaining wall as part of the amenity area calculation. I think that's something we could consider in our review of it.
Thanks, Brad. One more question. Again, in regards to the retaining wall, we know that retaining wall is going to require drainage at the bottom of that wall for any water that does. Where is that water going to go? Because by the looks of it, he's landlocked, and to be able to take that water, and if you were going to surface discharge it on the road, whatever, you'd require, a right-of-way would be required out of these properties. There's no room for a dry well, depending on how close that retaining wall is to the rear property line. So I guess my question is, how you get rid of the water at the base of that retaining wall? Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Patton, yeah, those are good questions. I don't have the answers to those questions. We're currently only at the development permit stage. Again, these are all kind of conceptual. We get more detail in the building permit stage as to the actual construction and engineering of that retaining wall when it gets submitted as as the plans are indicating. The applicant I know is in attendance tonight. There might be something you want to ask him about his or her plan is.
Okay. I have on my speaking list here that the applicants may be available, but I don't know who they are. So perhaps Brad. Okay, great. Would you like to ask the question of the applicants?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Pretty good, thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council.
So I guess my question is, and maybe it's not the right time, but has the geotechnical consultant have you been in contact with the geotechnical
Yes, the
consultant?
geotech was on site last week when we had the flood.
Excellent. Well, not excellent, but good to hear. Have you discussed with him in regards to the drainage at the bottom of that?
Yes, I believe they came to the district on Friday after we met on site to discuss the amount of water that came down from Giants Head Road, Tomlin Road, and 3 other neighboring properties onto our site during that time. We were assured at the time that our site has enough green space to collect the water that we have to deal with, but being inundated with an estimated 10,000 square feet of pavement did not help the situation. So they did find a solution, and hopefully the district will follow through on that.
Excellent. And as far as the new retaining wall that you'd be looking at, your 8-foot wall, down at the very base of that retaining wall where the footing is going to require a drainage system. Do you know, or has the geotech spoke on where that water is to go?
There are a few answers to that question. First of all, with the amount of rain that we've had, we're going to have multiple catch basins at the site. We're going to have catch basins at the top to catch the water that may come our way again. There is a concern about the environment these days. We are going to have catch basins midway and then catch basins at the back of the site. The retaining wall is 26 feet away from the closest edge of the building. And the drainage at the bottom of the wall will go down about 18 inches. There will be a gravel foundation before it. And in regards to your comment earlier about setting the wall back, over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking with the neighbors, and they've told me what type of block they'd like to have on there. And there was a request to set the wall back 2 feet onto our site. So there will not only be gravel below the wall, but there will also be 2 feet of gravel in front of it, going down about 2 feet as well, approximately 125 feet long. So a lot of cubic feet of area for the stuff that does slip through the drain system or catchment system that we're putting in place.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Okay, but just to note, the wall is going to move back 2 feet if this is allowed in both directions.
Excellent, thank you.
Before you go, I just have a quick question. You were saying that the neighbors had given you an idea of what kind of block wall they wanted, like what blocks in the wall. Are these the neighbors that experience the, significant water onto their property, or is this another neighbor?
This is the neighbor right beside them, and they requested the wall change. I believe I've let the neighbors know that there was going to be a textured or stamped block used. And the people beneath were the ones who suggested setting the wall back 2 feet. They feel it intimidates their backyard space, and so we obliged.
Okay, and they had asked for the 2 feet, so are they satisfied with that then?
I don't know. I haven't heard any more.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other questions for Brad or for the applicant? All right. Could I ask somebody to bring forward actually, just 1 second. think I had a question about one of the APC comments. Nope, that's good. That question has been answered. So would someone like to bring forward the, Councillor Barkwell, please?
The development permit application DP 21-023 for the construction of 2 townhouse buildings to be constructed at 8710 Tomlin Street and legally described as Lot A, District Lot 473, Osoyoos Division, Yale District Plan EPP 108592 be approved subject to 1, receipt of the performance security for landscaping. Can we do these separately? Just, I don't know, I'm always more comfortable that way. Not that anybody has any objection to either of them.
I just want to ask the Director of Development Services a question. With the variance, you know, with both of them being before us tonight, and it showing as a single resolution with 2 parts, without the variance for the wall, does that mean that the development will not happen?
Sorry, just to clarify, Your Worship, we've structured this to have 2 resolutions. So the way that Councillor Barkwell has read it would be the first one. And to answer your question, so yeah, you could allow the development permit to go ahead and not approve the retaining wall variance, or you could approve both tonight. That makes sense.
That does make sense, but my question is, if we do the development permit and then we have the discussion on the variance and that particular resolution fails, doesn't pass, does that mean that this development will not go ahead?
Yeah, that's what I mean, I think it would still go ahead. There could be a redesign to allow for a 2-meter retaining wall or a step back retaining wall, which would be in conformance with our zoning bylaw.
And so it wouldn't have to have the variance then?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you for answering that. So, Councillor Barkwell, we're looking, I shouldn't say just Councillor Barkwell. Council, we're looking at just what is itemized as number 1 in that. I am asking for a seconder. Councillor Van Alphen? Okay. So further discussion on this? This is for the development permit. Call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. Okay. Could I have you carry on with reading the second part?
That council authorize issuance of a development variance permit DVP 21-030 for property located at 8710 Tomlin Street and legally described as Lot A, District Lot 473, Osoyoos Division, Yale District Plan EPP 108592, and that a variance to the following section of zoning bylaw 200-450 be granted. Fences and retaining walls, section 5.5.4, to vary the maximum height for retaining walls from 2 meters to 2.5 meters.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Patton. Further discussion on the development variance for the retaining wall. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed on that either. Great, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Barkwell. Okay, 9.3, development permit 8709 Jubilee Road East, DP 22-005.
Thank you, Worship. The district has received a new multifamily development permit application for a forming character development permit for 40-unit townhouse development at 8709 Jubilee Road East. Most people in the community refer to this property as the old RCMP land. It's just for bearings. The subject property is currently zoned residential high density, RHD, and is designated in the OCP as high density residential as well. So as mentioned, this is a form and character development permit. Primarily proposes 2 new townhouse buildings with 4 units in each building, bringing the total up to 40 new housing units onto the market. The proposed buildings all comply with the proposed RHD zone, with the exception of amenity space. So there is a proposed variance to the zoning bylaw to allow for private patios in the form of rooftop patios to count towards the total amenity space calculation. And if they were not included, then there would be a deficiency in amenity space. In terms of site design, it's a bit messy on this map, but you can see that there's a proposal of 3 driveways to come from defined access points on Jubilee Road East. Each of these pathways will have a scored concrete walkway near the building to define the pedestrian paths that are coming from the Jubilee Road East. You can see those pathways shown on this map. There's also privacy fencing along the east and south property lines. On the west property line is the large retaining wall from the BC Tree Fruit site. So the privacy screening is proposed on just the east and south property lines. In terms of building design, the front entrances are clearly accessible via path to the street. You can see kind of some of the paths in these conceptual drawings. There is under building garages, and that's actually how the parking requirements are being met, is through the first story undercar double car garages on all of the units, which is meeting the 2 stall per unit requirement for the zoning bylaw. The proposed buildings are also divided into smaller buildings to avoid long expanses of uninterrupted walls. So there is gaps between each building for people to walk through. And the buildings do address the street by providing entrances facing Jubilee with clear pedestrian paths. But the garages are facing the driveway accesses that are going into the site. So it's not being too visibly intrusive from Jubilee Road. I already mentioned parking. There is 2 visitor parking stalls located at the very rear of the property, in close proximity to the garbage containers there. So there is 2 additional parking stalls that are above the zoning bylaw requirement. For landscaping, we have landscaping in the front yard along Jubilee Road East, where those which are separated by those access points for the drive lanes. There's also a landscape buffer proposed to the south property line of the property, with some plantings included there. Some shrubs that are bordering the pathways that are between the buildings are proposed as well. And then finally, there is a small landscaping strip proposed on the, it would be the east property line before those, that privacy screening. In terms of the amenity space variance, the total zoning bylaw requirements indicates that there's 1,200 square meters of amenity space required. Right now, according to the zoning bylaw, private patio spaces are not included in the calculation for amenity space. But I already mentioned there is a proposal to seek a variance to that provision to allow for the rooftop patios, which would be exceeding our amenity areas. Our calculation requires 30 square meters per unit. And proposed, if the rooftop patios are included, there would be 38.9 square meters per unit provided of amenity space, in addition to the common amenity spaces shown on that landscaping plan to the south and east. I mentioned there we go, the common landscaped area is 240 square meters. There we go. And so with this proposal was presented to the Advisory Planning Commission in June. There was some questions from APC that included how affordable the units will be to the applicant and how the rooftop patios may potentially impact the surrounding neighbors. And there was some questions with regards to noise potentially from the rooftop patios. And the applicant noted that the noise should travel upwards, and the rooftop amenity space in their experience is tend to be less noisy than ground-oriented amenity areas. There was also some questions of the dead-end accesses on the site instead of the provision of turnarounds on the property. And staff was able to clarify that isn't a requirement under the BC Building Code because these driveway accesses are less than 90 meters in length. Some further APC comments were that in general they were very supportive of the look and form of the development and that it was consistent with the surrounding area. They did suggest though that a potential site design would improve both vehicle access as well as create more shared common amenity areas. I do want to state too, there was actually a quite lengthy discussion, which was really great to hear from the Advisory Planning Commission and the developer's agent on redesigning and how the redesigning impact would increase or decrease the number of units and potentially make the project unaffordable with rising costs that are experiencing in the construction industry. And like there was some good back and forth about different ways to design the site, but still try to achieve cost, efficient development. But ultimately, the Advisory Planning Commission recommended to proceed with the proposal as is. They were supportive of the design in principle, and they provided a resolution of support. From staff's perspective, we feel like the visual impact of parking is minimized. There is some building articulation when the trellising of features within the development, but we think the privacy fencing will help with any concerns from nuisance impacts to the existing neighborhood. The entrances facing Jubilee Road East and creating a defined entrance point is positive as well. And we do see that the rooftop patios can be considered a functional amenity space for the residents. And for that reason, staff is supportive of the issuance of the development permit with the proposed variance included. Thank you. Any questions?
Councillor Traynor.
I like this development so far, what has been presented, and I think that it would be attractive to families for sure. I don't know where this fits in or if this is the time to discuss this, but if we do have families moving in there, where does a new sidewalk fit in along Jubilee, especially, that takes the kids to the schools and to the playgrounds and Memorial Park and stuff like that? Because right now it can be kind of sketchy when you are walking along there and driving along there, and pedestrians kind of come out of nowhere. So I think that needs to be addressed. Does that come into any of this?
Through your worship to Councillor Traynor, it is something I think that is going to become a need fairly soon. If it's not this project, it may be with the pool location as well, being in front of the arena parking lot as another example, needing that connection. It is difficult with the tire shop as well as the Timber Mart on the other side of the street with those access points that they're using for vehicle access. I think we would need to design something unique for that area that would be cognizant of the current use in order to get a pedestrian access through. But at the staff level, I think we do see the need for that connection. putting it on the backs of this development, unfortunately, the zoning is already in place. This is just a development permit. There's only so much we can require under the Act for a community amenity. We are requiring a sidewalk to our local road standard, to separate a sidewalk as shown on these plans in front of the development, and also construction to the local road standard up to the center line. But we probably couldn't put the connection to Rosedale, the one you're referencing, on this development exactly. And you know, eventually BC Tree Fruits would, I think, eventually redevelop. It might not happen tomorrow, could be 10 years from now, but I think at that point in time would be the right time to get that connection in.
Okay, thanks. Do we know what the speed limit is along Jubilee? Is it 50 or 30 in that section? It's 50? Yeah, okay. I just think that again, I really like this. I just think that as we put in a rec center and we continue to develop that area, that it's not safe for pedestrians right now. So we just need to think about that as we plan.
I can tell you that part of that Jubilee Road East is 30 because of its proximity to the school grounds. Okay. So at least during the school days. Councillor Burkwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kind of following up on Councillor Trainor's there, it seems to me that because the previous proposal was an affordable housing proposal, we went light on the community amenities, and then they got the rezoning, and now we're kind of hooped, right? So that's basically but on the other hand, the only mitigating thing is that I don't know sure what you would do on that street, and 40 more units is not percentage-wise a big number of new people walking along there until we get a pool. And so I guess that's more of a comment than a question. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Okay, are there other questions? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Traynor also. I think that compared to what the previous application was, this design is a lot less intrusive than with the other one, and by, I think, if I'm not mistaken, about 20 units less. I think we were looking about 60 units on the other project, and so I think the way the streetscape is quite complementary, and yeah, it is too bad that we can't get further offsite amenities, but that was something that we voted on previously on the rezone, so we have to ride that horse now. Thank you.
I know that I believe you said in your report that the visitor parking is adequate for this, but I'm wondering, really, with 40 units there, are 2 visitor stalls enough? And I guess along those lines, following that question is there any way that more than 2 visitor stalls would fit on that property? The way that he has it laid out.
Yeah, the zoning bylaw doesn't have a lot of criteria for this form of townhouse style development for visitor parking per se. Maybe it's a bit of a loophole with our bylaw. I know that there might have been more visitor parking for other jurisdictions, perhaps for this similar scale of development. There may be an opportunity to add visitor parking on the other 2 drive aisles, probably only 2 more additional. It might be something that the developer might want to consider based on council's feedback. I do want to say as well that as part of the development proposal, we'll be requiring the developer to upgrade the road and requiring at least the right-of-way area to allow for on-street parking in front of the development as well, which might require widening of the road. So that may help a little, but probably not a large amount.
Okay, thank you for that. Other questions? Could I have someone bring forward a motion, please? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That development permit number DP 22-005 for the construction of 10 townhouse buildings to be constructed at 8709 Jubilee Road East and legally described as Lot 1 District Lot 473 Osoyoos Division EL District Plan 18998 exempt plan 26059 be approved subject to the receipt of performance security for landscaping in the amount of $73,086.56 and with the following variance to zoning bylaw number 2000-450 to include areas used for private patio in the form of rooftop patios for each individual unit as amenity space is defined in the zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Patton, you're seconding. Thank you. Okay. Discussion? Councillor Barkwill.
Just a point, Madam Mayor. In one evening, if this passes, I think we'll have approved 137 apartments and townhouses, which is in one evening is probably more than the last 4 years, ever since Wharton Street, which is really good to see. You know, it boggles my mind that it's taken this long for the old police station site to have been developed, and hopefully this is the one that goes through. It's another building I've lived longer than. But I really like this solution to that location, with that big wall there at the packing house. It's a problem. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Barkwill. Any other comments or items for discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. Thank you. Sure keeping you busy tonight, aren't we, Brad? Zoning bylaw amendment 1506. So this is item 9.4 on the agenda. 1506 Laidlaw Street, bylaw number 2022-025, Z22-007.
Thank you. So we received an application to rezone the property at 1506 Laidlaw Street from residential large lot RSD2 to residential medium lot RSD1 to allow for the future subdivision of this property into 2 single-family residential lots. The subject property, as you can see from this aerial, is currently vacant and there's been no prior development on the property. And this is currently in Trout Creek. So right now, the OCP future land use designation identifies this as low density residential, and as I already mentioned, the zoning bylaw zones it as RSD2. The proposed bylaw request going from RSD2 to RSD1, in reference of the OCP, staff recognize that directing growth, and as well as this form of growth, going for a slightly smaller single family residential, is definitely supported when there's access to services, and it's efficient and cost effective for a municipality to provide this development pattern with sewer and water being provided in the Trout Creek community. The District of Summerland seeks to increase density in areas that are already currently designated low density residential from about 4 units per hectare to 22 units per hectare, to more efficiently use service land that's in close proximity to services, which this proposal is in conformance with. So just a comparison of zoning. The proposed RSD 1 zone has a reduced lot width of 12 meters, as well as a reduced lot area to 460 meters squared. The floor area ratio does increase slightly to 0.45, but not significantly from 0.4 in RSD 2. But those two things, the lot area as well as lot width, are the primary reasons why the applicants are pursuing the rezoning, to allow for a 2-lot subdivision of 2 lots proposed at 550 square meters as well as 557 square meters. Right now, the minimum lot area for the RSD2 already mentioned is 650, so subdivision wouldn't be allowed with the current zoning. And already mentioned that the minimum lot area for RSD1 is 460, so that 556 is well above that. Oops, sorry. We presented this proposal to the Advisory Planning Commission in June. Not really much to say from the Advisory Planning Commission. There was one supportive comment noting that this form of development was consistent with other form of development happening in Trout Creek, and on that basis, they recommended that council support the rezoning from RSD2 to RSD1. And as well, staff are recommending that we proceed with first and second reading at this time, and hold a public hearing with regards to the zoning bylaw amendment on August 22nd. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, council, do you have questions of Brad? If there are no questions, would someone bring forward the motion, please? Councillor Patton, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The zoning bylaw amendment 1506 Laidlaw Street, bylaw number 2022-025 be read a first and second time, and that a public hearing be held on August 22nd, 2022 to receive public feedback on zoning bylaw amendment 1506 Laidlaw Street, bylaw number 2022-025.
Such flair, thank you. Councillor Barkwill, you're seconding? Great. Any discussion on this? Councillor Barkwill.
I was just wondering for Director of Development Services, am I reading this correctly? I mean, minimum lot width is 18 meters and minimum lot depth is 30 meters. And this lot, it's just lucky coincidence that they've got about 2 inches to spare on each direction. And is that, I mean, it fits and it's good. And is that's just, am I reading that right?
Yeah, you're reading that right. They just meet our lot depth requirements.
And the width, yeah, okay, thanks.
Well, no, sorry, the 18 was the existing zone, but we're going down to 12.
Oh, going to 12, right, okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. I knew it couldn't be that close.
Okay. If there are no further questions or discussion, I will call the question. All in favor? Great. Thank you. And finally, 9.5 Development Services Activities Report for May and June of this year.
I'm sure this is the presentation you were all waiting for tonight. Happy to report again my monthly activity report for May and June. I apologize. We missed June. I'm presenting May's in June, so we're combining the 2 months together. Just with regards to planning applications, with regards to specific applications, they're all have been updated in the council report for council's benefit. But in general, May and June saw an uptick in the number of planning applications received by the district. Over the last 2 months, we've received a total of 9 rezoning and OCP applications, 5 subdivisions, 6 development variance permits, and 2 ALC applications. We did have a slow start to planning applications at the start of 2022. We only had a few applications trickle in January, February, but we're starting to see a lot of activity on the planning side, more long range work in the future coming forward. Unfortunately, at the same time, we've been short-staffed in the planning department. We've lost Alex Costin to a community in the Lower Mainland, so that's adding pressure to the management of those active files. I do want to note as well that DVPs are still down from previous years, which do show that, again, that trend that our zoning amendments to our administrative amendments are improving things with regards to the number of variance applications. May and June building permits, starting with the month of May, we saw a significant increase in building permit construction value, primarily due to one project being for 46 building permits that were issued for the Landry Crescent development in Trout Creek on the north tip of Trout Creek. That building, all 46 of those building permits were issued in May. So primarily single family and duplex units. The district received a total of $18,300,000 in construction value from that one project in May. And as a result as well, May also had a huge jump in our number of our building permits issued because there was 46 issued in May specific to that one development. For June, started to show a bit of the slowdown happening in the building permits side of things. We had only a total of 14 building permits, and construction value was just 1.4 million. I would say that this might be the first sign of the district being impacted by the rising interest rates that we're seeing across the basically global economy. We've heard rumblings of construction projects being shelved or parked potentially rather than coming in for a building permit, and generally you would see this first in building permits where you need to have that financing in place before you can move ahead. So some projects are potentially being put on hold rather than moving forward due to lack of financing. But overall, our total building permit construction value is now over $33 million, which is still on pace to some of our more record years, me being most recently last year at 59.8 million. We're over that amount halfway through the year. But it is expected that the number of building permits will continue to be lower due to interest rates, et cetera, as already mentioned. But we do have still some larger applications, some of which we were presented tonight, that may still increase our total construction value. In June, for bylaw enforcement activity, the bylaw services team received 84 calls for service in June, of which 53 are still open. 31 of those 84 calls were related to district staff generated files and generally included items such as building permit concerns, driveway access concerns, fire inspection, and then also works and infrastructure related. Overall, in year-to-year comparisons, over the last 3 years, we're at a total of 431 total bylaw enforcement files, with 178 remaining active. I do want to mention as well some other activities our bylaw enforcement team have been doing. We've been proactive with trying to get the community more aware of keeping garbages inside and to be more bear aware. There has been reported sightings of bears throughout the community, and our enforcement staff is doing joint patrols with the conservation office at night to inform residents of garbage best practices and to keeping them at night before your garbage day. As well, I want to mention that the bylaw staff attended the RCMP offices in June to introduce themselves to a lot of the new department members at the RCMP and also explain how they could collaborate further with the new staff there. But other than that, I'm happy to take any questions on any specific applications. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't want to monopolize the floor, but I have indeed been waiting for this report because I do have a burning question. I noted that 46 permits, total value of $19 million. That's only about $400,000 a unit for those units down there at the Landry Crescent. So how do we determine the value for our building permits, and are we getting full value, and should that be reviewed with the way?
Through your worship to Councillor Barkwell, we do have a table we include in our fees and charges bylaw for minimum construction factors. Most jurisdictions have these factors that are based on residential, commercial, or industrial square footage, cost per square foot. Sometimes those tables can get out of date, like especially with inflation nowadays. But we do use those tables to establish a floor. And in my experience, sometimes we do have to challenge back a developer or a contractor where they're saying that something can be done for $50,000 to $100,000 when it's a massive project, and we've done that in the past. But in this case, $400,000 per unit. There might be cost efficiencies with some of them being duplexes. They're not overly big. They're kind of vacation rental properties more so, or for secondary homes for people as well, where probably around 1,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms total square footage. So maybe it's achievable. I'm not too sure. I'm not the developer though.
So is this table your charges? Does it a table that council has to update now and then through bylaw? I just know that the construction costs, they go up and down, but they generally have gone up a lot lately. And I don't remember ever, maybe it's buried in some fees and charges bylaw that we approved some time ago. But I just wondered if we are up to date on that, because I know we are going to have to look at DCCs as well. And maybe that could be included.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think that's something we could consider. We did recently look at our building permit fees in general and look at our comparisons of our rate, like per construction value. We didn't really change things too much at changing our rate, but I think it's good to review those construction factors periodically to make sure they're still accurate for what the industry standard is for construction value. Generally, we're not using it to a large degree because most people are honest with regards to their total construction value, and it's true. People generally just you ask for the number and they give you the number, but others, they know how to game the system, perhaps.
Great questions, Councillor Barkwell. Do you have other ones? Does anyone have other questions about the Development Services Report? Okay, so can we receive that for information, please? Councillor Van Alphen, seconded by Councillor Traynor. All in favor? Great. Okay, no bylaws for adoption. And I guess the notice of motion is not going forward tonight because she's not here. So we're now on to item 13.1, correspondence. Just 3 pieces of correspondence, including the RDOS report. Anything that someone would like to bring forward? All right. So could we receive those for information, please? Councillor Patton, Councillor Van Alphen, all in favor? And just no minutes. Okay. Now we will have our councillor reports. Councillor Traynor, I'm starting with you this evening.
Just a quick note. My family and I attended the fire hall open house on Saturday, and it was really, really well done. And I should have said it this morning when the fire chief was here, but the staff did a really good job. I feel like they put in a lot of effort. They were all in their suits and everything was open. You could go wherever you wanted and try out different things. And it was just really neat because we haven't been able to do that for a couple of years. And I think it's such a good community event. And so I just wanted to thank staff for putting that together. And I look forward to another one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Traynor. Councillor Barkwell.
Nothing to report, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Grateful I don't have to move irrigation. The amount of rain we've had. Don't have to worry about going over our allotments, that's for sure. Another thing I'd just like to say congratulations, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Bob Van Bolken, who is our new Rotary President here in Summerland. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And thank you for hosting that. Councillor, who am I missing? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
All right, easy peasy. Okay, so we're at our second public or media comment period, and I do have one name on the list, and that is, and there may be others, but we'll start with Murray Roney.
My name is Murray Roney, and I reside at 12018 Gallagher Street. And I have attempted to work with various staff over a period of years to resolve a number of significant concerns about the administration of the district and inequities in the enforcement of bylaws by staff and decisions made by council. Each and every time, staff have failed to meaningfully engage in constructive discussions to undertake action or commit to a timetable for action. I have brought my concerns to former and current mayors and council members and have always been referred back to staff. Please consider the following. On January 2022, I wrote to Mayor Boot complaining about the failure of staff to respond to a bylaw complaint. And while this specific complaint has now been dealt with, there is a large number of substantive and serious matters that have not been addressed relating to the provision of information to council for effective decision-making and about the inequitable enforcement of bylaws. Mayor Boot replied, "Hello, Murray. I spoke with Gramstat CAO about your complaint. Although it is an operational matter, not a governance one, I wanted to follow up on your voicemail. I apologize for not responding to you by phone after speaking with Graham the day that I received the VM. I understand your frustrations and concerns, but I feel this matter is best left in the hands of administration/operations to address. The CAO will update me on progress as appropriate. Mayor Tony Boot, District of Summerland." I found Ms. Boot's reply to be unresponsive to the issue. Ms. Boot's rationale for not meeting with me was that my complaint was not a matter of governance. Merriam-Webster defines governance as to control and direct the making and administration of policy. How does my complaint not fall within the definition of governance? Her response also represents a failure to perform her duties as defined by the community charter, which states, responsibility of council members. Every council member has the following responsibilities: A, to consider the well-being and interests of the municipality and its community, and B, to contribute to the development and evaluation of the policies and programs of the municipality, respecting its services and other activities. In addition to the mayor's responsibility as a member of council, the mayor has the following responsibilities. Part D, to provide on behalf of the council general direction to municipal officers respecting implementation of municipal policies, programs, and other directions of council.
Mr. Roney?
Yes.
There is a 2-minute time allotment. Are you almost finished with your presentation?
I might need 2 minutes more. And it's my understanding that council can grant that. And given the nature of it, I request that that be done.
Council, would you like to hear another 2 minutes from Mr. Roney? Okay, please go ahead.
It's my belief that I was asking the mayor to perform the very duty specified by law, which I just read out. If it is not the mayor's responsibility to address concerns about municipal staff, who is responsible? Did you not hire them? Do you not evaluate their performance? I ask you, Madam Mayor, specifically, what legislation, common law principle, or legal precedents would supersede the legal obligations created by the community charter? I also ask you how referring allegations back to the persons or persons that allegations are being made against has any basis in rationality. Wouldn't Mayor Booth's decision to send the matter back to staff be analogous to the Crown developing a case against an alleged criminal, and when they move to trial, having the judge decide that they wouldn't consider the evidence of the prosecution? Not only would the evidence be ignored, but the judge decided to have the accused render the decision on all charges. I believe it is important to note that since my concerns were referred back to Mr. Stat, I have not received any communications from him or his colleagues. This leads me to believe that he has no intention of coming to grips with the identified issues. I still want a meeting with the mayor and councillors so as to present my evidence. Therefore, I now ask, will the mayor and council set a date and time to meet with me and commit to making best efforts to consider my concerns and documentation, to work towards plans for creating remedies, and to set deadlines for actions? And two, do you have answers to any of my questions, or do you have questions for me that you would like captured on the public record? Thank you for your time.
I do indeed have answers to your questions. You asked, doesn't the mayor and council, don't they hire their staff? The answer is no. The only staff person that we hire is the CAO.
And that's who I was complaining about.
Just a moment, I'm not finished answering your questions. We also do not manage staff. The management of staff is done by the Chief Administrative Officer, who is Graham Stat. We don't do performance reviews. Again, that is something that is done not only by Mr. Stat, but by the directors of the individual departments. So that is the difference, that is a clear difference between what we do as governance or governors and what administration does in their role of performing their duties. My understanding is that you were, and I believe you said this, that you were complaining about enforcement, bylaw enforcement.
Amongst other things, yes.
Well, this is what you were talking about tonight, was the bylaw enforcement. Bylaw enforcement is not under the purview of governance. That is an administrative responsibility. That is why I responded the way that I did, in that this was a matter that needed to go to the Chief Administrative Officer so that he could perform his responsibilities there. It is not my responsibility, nor the responsibility of anyone on council, to direct staff other than our CAO. And we do that as a body, not as individuals.
Madam Mayor, my meeting was with Mr. Stat. My complaint specifically directed to Mr. Stat, and I have been attempting to deal with him and waiting for answers for more than a year. And I have dealt with previous councils going back to those of Mayor Perino, Mayor Waterman, and I have failed to get any movement or action or any indication that there is an intention to deal with it. I have specific issues, but because it involves private information of various parties, that's why I did not bring up the specifics, and also because I did not have time in the amount allocated to deal with them. Now, did you read the material that I directed you to?
My question to you, Mr. Roney, is if you have, it is your specific complaint that you're referring to tonight, is it specifically about the CAO?
My complaint is in relates to the failure of the CAO to address the concerns or to respond to the correspondence that I've provided to him. I also have concerns about the enforcement of bylaws and the failure of Mr. Stat to deal with those concerns. It's whether or not I understand your position in terms of the enforcement of bylaws, but also you are responsible for directing the provision, the administration of the programs. And I'm suggesting that the bylaw enforcement people are overstepping their discretion as is authorized or as is recommended by the ombudsperson, which is the basis of the policy that Mr. Dulliver developed. Specifically, that program states that there is to be discretion for enforcement personnel. However, they cannot overrule the mandatory provisions of a bylaw. Discretion must be specified in the bylaw, and that discretion cannot result in parties being treated differently given similar or the same circumstances.
Okay, Mr. Roney, I'm going to stop you there. We're well over the 2 minutes, well over the 4 minutes. I have answered your questions. I will, if you wish, I can have other conversations with you, but not in the public forum. You're talking about staff, and as you said, and I appreciate you following this, you're not bringing up, I guess, information that might be sensitive. So in the public space. However, if you would like to engage with me further, we can do that, but this isn't the time or the place.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That is exactly what I was asking for. I will expect your call.
Okay, perhaps you can leave your phone number with our corporate officer.
I shall.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that you have on the line or that has registered to speak? Okay. So we are at the end of our meeting. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't register. I mean, I emailed to register about the variance at the 8709 Jubilee Road. Told I couldn't speak on that.
You cannot speak on a development variance application.
May I speak to you and the council? No, just freely for 2 minutes.
Is it regarding the variance?
It's regarding the development. Complete development. I just want to air it.
Did you submit anything by email?
I am the author of it.
Okay, so then we've read that because all of the correspondence came to council, including the information that was received today. Would you care to identify yourself?
I will. I just want 2 minutes.
Well, well, I appreciate that. I don't know what I'm not really sure where to go with this, but hold on a minute. I will check with our corporate officer, and she's working on that now. Council's discretion. Okay, we're good? Okay, please come forward. And please start with your name and your address, please.
Thank you. I've never done this before, so I'm a little nervous. My name is David Christoffoli. I live at 8704 Purvis Road, and my townhouse backs onto 8709 Jubilee. If I have that, yeah, 8709 Jubilee Road. For since I moved in, since I bought my place, I have seen this ugly mess behind me, and I too am excited about a development. But I do have a couple of concerns. One of them is the garbage bins that are going to be at the back. They'll be smelling right in my only safe haven, and I would like to see your planning department talk to the developer to move them. Been somewhere else where it's not right in front of me, where my only, like I said, my only safe haven is. The only other, and I'm concerned about my property value. I just moved in last September, and I'm concerned my property value is going to considerably decline because of these garbage bins and with the noise. There's that big cement wall on the BC tree fruits, and I'm sure that the developer could somehow put garbage bins up against there somewhere. And really, we are a really wonderful community, and I would hate to see that this 40-unit community in itself be at odds with the rest of the community that's been there and well established for a long time. All right? Thank you. I want to have one more thing to say. I'm not opposed to the rooftop, but I would like to see sound barriers because actually, contrary to what was spoken earlier, if sound did go up, then church bells wouldn't be very effective. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I guess, Brad, you have taken note of those things. At least the garbage can things, that's probably not a big deal. In terms of the rooftop patios, I really have no idea. It'll be a discussion between the developer and if this goes ahead.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. So I will ask the two women that have stayed here till the end of the meeting. Did you want to add anything? Okay. Oh. Oh, good. All right. So are you new to Summerland then? Oh. Ah. Ah. Oh, okay, local government everywhere. Well, welcome to Summerland, and thank you for attending our meeting.
I just have to say, it's not usually this exciting.
Yes, I had that very comment about 3 weeks ago. Man, your council meetings are boring. Okay, call for adjournment. Councillor Van Elfen and Trainer, all in favor.